So one of the exceptions where the sender does want to send things faster are person-to-person remittances, where workers from other countries want to send money home and recipients want access as fast as possible to those funds. But remittances are only a small percentage of the value of global cross-border payments. So we need to weigh the benefits against the cost of a potential public sector intervention to shift incentives. So I'm still left with the larger question of whether we should be incentivizing faster cross-border payments. But suppose we do want to incentivize senders by lowering costs of faster payments. Whose responsibility is it to do that? Should it be left to private sector competition to drive down costs, as is typically done with nearly every other product that we trade in our lives? Or is there something unique about payments that require central banks or payment system operators to step in to interlink their networks with the goal of bringing costs down? We have already seen examples of the private sector leveraging technology to innovate in the market for cross-border instant payments, both at the wholesale and the retail level. For example, we have seen a real-time payment system built for wholesale clients that allows clearing and settlement between global clients in seconds, with necessary compliance performed up front in less than 24 hours. Another example is the SWIFT global payments innovation, which offers improved speed and transparency for the business customers of participating banks, and by their account has been adopted by 150 banks globally. In mentioning these examples, I'm not intending to endorse certain private sector services. Rather, these newer services are illustrative of how market forces and competition can meet consumer and business demands for more efficient cross-border payments. In the United States, we have experience with offering low-cost international ACH payments. We provided direct ACH linkages from the United States to Europe and Canada, but after more than 20 years, the banks were simply not using it, and we stopped the service. It is possible that a fast payment interlinking arrangement adopted by the Federal Reserve could be more effective for our bank customers than the former ACH service, which in practical terms means that valuable global interlink networks would have to be founded on underlying domestic networks with a breadth of senders and receivers. Domestic networks must be developed first. If this condition is not in place, interlinked networks would end up being a road to nowhere. Building out domestic networks has been done in different ways. In some countries, the central bank has authority to mandate participation, notably in Brazil, with a successful PIC system. In other countries, notably India, united efforts by the government, the central bank, and the private sector established the digital public infrastructure that enabled broad adoption and the huge success of the UPI. In the United States, however, it's a different story. And the payments landscape for us is unique compared to other countries. We have over 9,000 depository institutions and different authorities than other countries. The Federal Reserve is determined that it was needed to build a fast payment system accessible to all depository, all 9,000, to achieve our policy goals. At the time of our decision, there was only one private sector instant payment system in the market, built by the largest banks. Based on our experience, we did not believe that this system would ultimately reach all depository institutions, nor would other private sector systems emerge to compete with it and extend the scope of that service. Yet we knew from industry engagement that smaller banks across the U.S. wanted a broadly accessible fast payment system. So we stepped in to address what was a clear coordination problem in the market. This action is very much consistent with the Federal Reserve's role in the U.S. payment system for the last 110 years. Now, we have seen widespread adoption of our fast payment system, the FedNow service, in just a little over a year since implementation, with close to 1,000 depository institutions on the network, including many of the largest banks that will drive origination volume. Yet we are still in the beginning of a multi-year journey of establishing a ubiquitous network covering the majority of institutions in our country. Variation around the globe in domestic fast payment network adoption means that the value of globally interlinked systems is not yet clear. From a technical perspective, the promise of interlinking, which is essentially interoperability between or among domestic fast payment systems, is that fast payment networks can just connect. You just get the right adapter, you plug them together, you put some tape around them and turn it on. Okay, this sounds simple, but in practice, however, achieving interoperability is not simple. Technology is probably the easiest part of setting up a globally interconnected payment system. The legal, compliance, settlement, and governance challenges I mentioned earlier are far more substantial. In addition, even when technological connections are in place, payments may not actually be instant as they traverse across systems because of domestic variations in ISO 20022 implementation, which is the global standard used by most fast payment systems. To send an ISO message seamlessly from one country to the other, operators need to coordinate and align on common messaging standards. We should consider that new multilateral arrangements for interlinking could potentially address some of the challenges I have outlined. Today, certain countries have established bilateral links between domestic fast payment systems, primarily to support remittances payments. These arrangements demonstrate that linkages are technically possible and that legal and compliance issues can be addressed. Yet each link is unique and requires resource-intensive negotiation and alignment between parties. Establishing bilateral linkages, where each arrangement required bespoke agreements with correspondent banks and service providers. Multilateral arrangements might bring some efficiencies, yet they are no small undertaking. So to sum up, overall, I do see the value of a coordination role for the public sector to improve cross-border payments, an effort in which the Federal Reserve has been and will continue to be heavily engaged. We will continue our engagement with international fora to improve the speed and efficiency of cross-border payments and to investigate the issues critical to interlinking payment systems. Our chief focus in the near to midterm, however, is continuing to build our FedNow network domestically and increasing participation in that service. We are also improving cross-border rails by considering expanding operating hours for our large-value real-time gross settlement system, the FedWire Funds service, and by adopting ISO 20022, a globally accepted messaging standard. Looking out over the longer term, we will continue to conduct research and experimentation on emerging technologies to better understand the role these innovations could play in the payments landscape of the future. I expect the technical capabilities, legal infrastructure, and use cases for faster cross-border payments will evolve, and I look forward to following the private sector innovation that will emerge from stakeholders represented at this event. Thank you very much.
With XRP Ledger and real-world assets.
Yeah, I think if you look at the more like tangible side of it, what's concrete, look at what like Mountain Protocol or Ondo or Midas, some of these issuers are doing with yield-bearing stable coins and how quickly they're recognizing adoption through ecosystems. And similar to what people have seen with Circle, building native USDC on-ramps is difficult and it's resource intensive. And so what ends up happening is beyond where Circle represents native on-ramping, there are Axelar wrapped USDC, there are other bridge wrap USDCs, and they're well adopted because there's more demand for these assets than the issuers can necessarily scale. And it becomes complicated when you start working across different VMs. And so you see the same thing with these yield-bearing stablecoins. There's huge demand for them in DeFi across different ecosystems, and those teams have looked to Axelar as a distribution channel for them to be able to move more quickly than they could otherwise to get those assets in the hands of users and applications. And we think if you look at everything that Ripple is doing and where they're strategically positioned around institutions and enterprise, this is going to be a huge opportunity for us to tokenize new real world assets and then distribute them to the rest of those ecosystems that we're working with now. So that's certainly on the very concrete, tangible side, looking at that. And we're very much interested to see where the larger financial institutional space moves, how quickly they're able to find comfort to really tokenize certain portfolios of assets. But publicly, you can take a look, look at what JP Morgan did with Project Guardian and take a look at what Deutsche Bank is doing now with Project Guardian. And the work that they're doing with Axelar will be presented in November. So kind of wait for them to share a little bit more about what they're testing in this proof of concept. But this stuff is, we're on the precipice. We are finally getting the pieces of infrastructure in that we're really moving forward. And so I think that we're very excited about it. And we think that Ripple can absolutely end up being one of the major hubs that kind of creates that first step that brings on those larger financial institutions to start.
We're working on a number of different potential advancements in XRP Ledger technology to better support real world assets. So one example is, a token type made specifically for RWA called multi-purpose tokens that allows for storage of metadata directly with the asset. There's a few other advantages in terms of scalability, flexibility as well, but we're really trying to increase the suitability for the XRP Ledger for this use case to really lower the barrier to entry for these institutions. Axelar as well, integrating with Axelar, having interoperability is obviously essential for institutions from the tech side. And the last piece I'll mention on technology is Ripple Custody, which is proving to be a really interesting and sort of logical entry point for a lot of these large institutions in terms of on-chain RWA. The place for institutions to hold their assets to on-ramp for these assets in Eden. So really excited about that. They're one of the top players in the space. They have a really strong mind around compliance and how they uphold those standards when it comes to tokenizing real world assets. Ripple also announced an initial initial purchase of their assets. So we'll actually, have some skin in the game and hold, on-chain treasuries on our balance sheet, which I'm particularly excited about. Crypto is well aware of the challenges there. The second is really around regulation. When we're bringing institutions on chain and, James mentioned Project Guardian, when you have projects like this that's taking either real world assets or native crypto assets and leveraging the power of the different crypto-based protocols, we have to keep in mind that there is somewhat of a braking mechanism there or sort of a speed limit there, which is, has regulatory clarity caught up. And none of us, that are institutionally focused want to exceed that speed limit, so to speak. So we have to kind of, put a little bit of brakes on the potential of crypto and blockchain in order for regulation to catch up. But I think we're making a lot of progress. There's a lot of, bright minds working on the regulatory and legal side. So, I'm excited for that space to catch up as well.
Introducing the network of networks. Interchange Connect unlocks a new era of connectivity and is your solution to advanced off-exchange settlement. minimizing counterparty risk simply, safely, and securely. Say goodbye to access restrictions and inefficiencies. Interchange Connect lets clients securely transfer digital assets between their accounts through API, eliminating the need for multiple accounts and network management. Via your Zodia Custody wallet, connect seamlessly with Metaco, Fireblocks, and Clearloop, the first networks in our ever-evolving ecosystem. Explore the future of connectivity with Zodia Custody, the most connected, qualified custodian.
So a 2-minute overview on what we are and who we are. So we came out to Standard Chartered Bank as part of their innovation program 4 years ago as a standalone crypto custodian. This is super important because post-FTX, that language is really important. Pre-FTX, people didn't care about us. They cared because they had an exchange and they had a custodian and they were all happy. Now the world has changed, and being owned by a bank, or by 3 banks in fact, is actually super important to the safety and security of your digital assets. And being owned by a bank, or by 3 banks in fact,